Okay, perfect. Hi, guys. I don't know if anyone's watching or if you're watching on replay, but my name is Mary. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Amanda, and I did this last time with Mary. I have a channel. I'm not posting to it this year, but if you're interested, my channel is Her Pacific Northwest Washington Life, and I am somewhat active on my Instagram when I have the desire to post book pictures. More like take book pictures and then post them. But,
Yeah.
I'm Victoria. My channel is Musical Bookworm, and my Instagram is the same name. And I read Pride and Prejudice actually back in like January or February, and then Amanda saw that I had talked about it, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to join our book club?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely," because I've been wanting to read all the Jane Austens. I've only read 2, so I'm really excited that I am now in the fold, and I'm happy that you told me about this, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're really excited that you're joining us. And so this is our second live show, like Amanda mentioned. And the way that the book club is sort of working is we're doing one Jane Austen novel in publication date order every other month. So in June, we'll read
Mansfield Park.
Like I just looked up which one it is. Yeah. So, but yes. And then Amanda and Victoria's stuff, like their links to their Instagrams and YouTubes, are in the description box. So you should follow them as well. But do you guys want to just get into sort of like non-spoilery what Pride and Prejudice is about? I'm sure that most people are pretty familiar with the plot of Pride and Prejudice, but we can just sort of talk about what it's about, I guess.
Yeah. How do we explain it?
Marriage.
Yeah. I mean, that's
about marriage.
Prideful characters who also have a lot of prejudice against other characters.
Realizing, like marrying up.
Yes, marrying up. Yep.
Yeah. One of the things I think is really interesting about Jane Austen's novels, so the 2 that I've read, I've only read Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, but what I think is really interesting about them is that she incorporates a lot of like economics into her books, and like there's always a lot of like a will, and like the estate is going to one character, so you have to like, that's why the girls have to get married, is because they don't have an inheritance or whatever. So I always think that's really interesting, just because like I don't know, I don't think it's included as much in books now, because I'm reading Middlemarch right now, and that's a big subplot in that, is like who is inheriting what. And so
I read Middlemarch a few months ago. Well, kind of last year, but the politics are much bigger in Middlemarch as well.
Yeah,
that plays a big role, which like I didn't understand. I was like, I don't understand the politics in this book. But
I'm actually. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm in an estate planning course right now for law school, and so it's been really interesting because like I feel like I always hear the terms that they talk about, but I never knew what they meant before now.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you bring that up, because like one of the probably most well-known opening lines is in this book, and it's it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife, which sets this book up perfectly.
So the fortune always comes first, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works then.
The other thing I think is really interesting, I guess, about that being the opening line of this book that I didn't really think about, is that like you're either in search of a good wife because you have a fortune, or you're in search of a wife with a fortune because you don't have a fortune.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Depending on the character motivations. But
either way, it's about money, right?
Yeah. It's about that character.
Money and society and
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's really fun too to see like the differences between all the sisters, because we've got a marriage between the Bennets which works somehow, but you can tell that like the dad just really doesn't care for the mom.
That is a prequel I would love to read. Like,
Right,
how
like,
did they
how
end
did-
up married to each other?
Yeah. And then you've got the 5 sisters who are all out in society. They've all been presented at the same time, even though you've got the oldest who's like 23?
I think so. And then the youngest is 15.
15, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all out at the same time because it's not fair to have the younger girls be kept hidden away until the older girls get married. So yeah, it's really interesting to see the dynamic, how some of the sisters act more like reserved and like whatever will happen, and then other sisters who just kind of want to advance themselves and like really get out there and find that man.
Well, it's interesting to think of Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. I've never really thought of that before, but like I think we could probably safely assume that they were like some kind of arranged marriage as well, because another big like theme of the book is the old versus the new.
Yeah.
All, you know, the young people wanting to marry for love, and this being a new idea back then.
Yeah.
I think maybe we could maybe assume that they would have been in some kind of set up arranged marriage.
Yeah.
It was advantageous to both.
Yeah. Somehow.
That's interesting. I've never thought about them as a couple, really.
Yeah.
You just know they exist.
Yeah.
Mr. Bennet just does what his wife says, tells him to do, or he's already done it and likes to give her a hard time, and you know.
He just thrives on exacerbating her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something else I've never quite understood was why was the estate entailed to Mr. Collins? Like, why?
I looked it up because I didn't understand that either. Because there are other characters who have female. Because at first I was just like, oh well, maybe women couldn't inherit then, or like couldn't own land. But there are other female characters who inherit land, and so there's this thing. Well, I'm not going to get into it because it's boring. But there's this thing called the rule against perpetuities, which means that basically in your will you can only will things so far in advance. But it didn't exist at the time that this book was written. So someone's great great grandfather decided that this estate would only pass to male heirs, and you couldn't change it. So every male heir gets a life estate. So he has it until he dies, and then if his wife outlives him, she has it until she dies, and then it passes to the next male heir. So I'm really excited that I looked that up because I was so curious.
You knew
by that sounds, then it sounded like Mr. Bennet was so concerned with when he passed away, everyone would be kicked out, or I guess Miss Bennet was more concerned with that. So she would get the estate until she passed away.
I think so technically, but I think that like the next male heir could still probably move in early, because that's what happened in Sense and Sensibility as well. Is the son inherited it when his dad died, and his mom was supposed to be able to live there until she died, but he and his wife kicked her out. So interesting. The more you know.
I'm glad that you knew that information, because
I was desperate to learn that, because I was like, because I don't know, I guess like on first impression I just assumed that women couldn't inherit anything, but then later in the book there's like multiple women who are inheriting stuff, and so I was like, hold on.
Like Catherine de Bourgh. She has her estate still. And her daughter is very well off.
So that was something I was very curious about.
Fun. Well, do we want to get into the spoilery section now?
Yes. Okay. I think it's time. We lasted longer than I thought we would on things.
9 minutes. All right. I just pulled up our questions on my other screen.
Yeah, I have them on my phone.
Cool.
These questions are so good.
Yeah, it always makes me think.
So do you want to just do, Victoria, do you want to just do your first one?
Sure.
Start, and then we'll go from there.
A good way to start it off. Yeah, it's kind of like a more vague question. So, so my question was just, how do we see Austen kind of like her commentary on the societal norms of her day? Because I think personally, at the end of the day, Pride and Prejudice is a social critique. And so I think there's a lot of things that are being discussed other than just marriage and marrying for love. but I'm curious like what other people have picked up on. So yeah, so how do you see Austen challenging the norms of her day?
Yeah, she was always challenging societal norms in her books, wasn't she?
Yeah.
So it is really interesting, especially to see them in such a well-known story, because you would kind of think that if you didn't read too much into it, you would kind of think like she's a hopeless romantic, wanting to find that love too, because she doesn't like blatantly make fun of societal norms. She does it in a very clever way, which I think is really fun. Yeah, but I'll let Mary answer first.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's interesting that like the character we get, or like the point of view from the most, is Elizabeth. And like clearly she wants to go against society's norms. But then I think there was another question in here somewhere about like how she still ends up marrying someone who's like she still ends up marrying up just the way that like society wanted her to. But I do think that like I almost wonder if that's because Jane Austen was worried she wouldn't be able to get away with like having a happy ending about somebody completely going against society. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I had similar thoughts of maybe if they had married to like a lower class, maybe that was just going to be like way too like revolutionary for her readers, like maybe that would be too shocking. And because they still need to be like financially secure. That was how you did it back then.
And just for like practicality, it would be much harder. So I almost wonder if it's just because like, I don't know, Jane Austen, all of her main heroines seem very practical to me. All of the two that I've read are very practical. So I don't know. I think she's just like has that practical view. Yeah. So I know she writes romance, but I don't really see her as a romantic for that reason, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. More pragmatic.
Yeah. Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, I think too, going along with like societal norms at that time would have been to have maybe just the first two daughters out in society at one time, and then she challenges that by everyone being out and about. And just, I don't know, I think it's really interesting too that she writes a character who finds such flaws in another character's pride and his prejudice, when in fact that character that we're getting the most from is also like that. Yeah. So I think that's kind of an interesting, like, kettle calling the pot black sort of thing. But just saying that you would expect somebody of a higher class to have more prejudice against a lower class, and then to see that the lower class also can hold prejudices against a higher class.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a big one that she's pushing against is the idea that if you have money, you're going to behave well, because we see people in lower class and higher class that are not behaving well. So Lady Catherine does not behave well, and
she's a monster.
Yeah, she's a total monster. And then, but also like Mrs. Bennet in many ways doesn't necessarily behave well either. And like, while you see her heart is maybe in kind of the right place, like for her daughters, you also see like the ways in which she is maybe foolish or not as educated about the way the world is changing and the way the world works, and like, she's kind of out of touch with her daughters a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think you see both. You see lower class people, and Mr. Collins too. He's not like super high class either, and he's pretty
so
foolish. So you see both of that, like higher and lower. It doesn't mean that you like have it figured out. It just means you're in a higher or lower class. So that's something that I didn't necessarily pick up on the first time I read it, and I picked up more on the second time.
How everyone sort of behaves improperly.
Right.
something I think is interesting about all of the daughters being out at once is that it seems like such a big risk to not let Jane go out before her like 15-year-old sister, especially when, because what does Charlotte Lucas say? She's like, I'm 27, like no one else will marry me, I have no other prospects or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, it just seems, I guess 4 years is a long time, but still it feels like they're cutting it kind of close by not putting her out in society earlier on.
Practically a spinster at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about.
Yeah. I can't imagine being 15 and being like, yep, I'm getting married. But different times, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that is really interesting too. I guess that probably speaks a lot to Mrs. Bennet, though, with her end goal really being just to marry off the girls.
Yeah.
So she's probably like, why wait? You know, if there's a chance that a younger one could go and get out of the house.
Yeah.
We'll put them all up at once, and at some point, they'll all get taken away.
Yeah. Even though you can like definitely tell that the younger girls need to gain a lot more maturity before they're out in society, because I do think it had a hindrance on maybe not Jane so much, but definitely Elizabeth, because Bingley didn't care. But I mean, and we do have this question in Darcy's lovely marriage proposal. You know, he's putting down her family and calling out the fact that like your sisters are running wild and your mom can't control them, and she's just as bad as they are. So yeah.
But I still want to marry you because I'm a good guy.
Yeah, because I love you for whatever reason. I don't know why. And I shouldn't, but
it's like, Darcy, I think you need someone to proofread before you.
Both the proposals we get in this book to Elizabeth are so terrible.
Yeah.
Mr. Collins is like, well, your sister's prettier than you, but she's already spoken for almost, so I guess I'll marry you.
Yep. Yeah. Oh man.
I like that Darcy is flawed in that way, and I know I've talked to some people who like they really don't like Darcy because of that, and they just can't forgive him in the end, and they're like, Darcy's not my favorite like Jane Austen man. But I don't know, I kind of like that he's so flawed and that he learns he has things to learn, and I kind of really like that about Darcy as a character.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that he doesn't have so much pride that he can't acknowledge his flaws and that they need fixing.
Yeah.
You know, like he knows I don't do well out in society where I have to talk to people that I don't like or that I don't know. And, you know, he kind of really puts himself out there just to initially talk to Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And while she's constantly in her mind thinking like, I can never like this guy. He's just horrible. He's never going to be a good person in my mind. But like he's really trying, and you can see that, which is something that I feel like, because it's been a long time since I've read the books. So in the movie, like you don't really see his character development as well as you do in the book. So it was really refreshing to reread that and just be reminded of those aspects of him.
Yeah.
So.
And I know when Amanda and I were buddy reading this, I was talking about, I don't remember Darcy's interest being expressed as early on in the book as it is. Because it's like in the first quarter, he's already like, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something that like let you know that Darcy was interested in Elizabeth. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot more sense than I remember it making when I read this the first time.
Not just like a switch flipping for him. Like, yeah, all right, she'll do. Like she's better than Bingley's sister.
Or gosh, who was he supposed to marry?
His cousin.
Yeah. Aren't we all glad that's not a thing anymore?
Yeah.
Like,
I cannot imagine.
Every Victorian book, like every Victorian era book, there's someone marries a cousin or is gonna marry a cousin.
Yeah.
It's like in every single book.
Yeah, we had 2 of them in this one.
Yeah. Gosh. I just can't imagine getting together with one of my siblings and being like, you know what our kids should do? Get married. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I guess because of like keeping money in the family and keeping Like it was all about the lineage and the line and what's being passed on. So
yeah.
I guess if that's how matches are made, I guess it could kind of make sense that that's what they would do.
we didn't know as much about like genetic diseases or like
they probably didn't
happen if you breed too close.
Yeah.
But
well, and something, Mary, that you and I talked about last live stream is when the Elliots, was that the last name? I can't remember.
I think I'm terrible at remembering.
Anyway, but that most people tend to settle near their families.
Yeah.
And that, you get around by cart and buggy. It's not like you're going extreme distances. So really the people that you can be matched with end up being
your neighbors, whoever's right around you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think even at the end of Pride and Prejudice, that's like a line of like, oh, they're only like this many miles away from their families.
Yeah.
Like Elizabeth and Darcy. So that would definitely have been more important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
That probably explains why it's so exciting whenever a new family moves in.
Yes.
Because we're like, thank God, new people.
Right? Yeah. We're going to have parties every night for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to do another one of your questions or?
We can do one of Amanda's.
Yeah, well, I think my first question kind of ties in. It's Charlotte declares early in the book that happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance. Do you agree with her?
For this time, yes, I think so.
Right?
Especially because people were like, you meet someone, you court for like 2 weeks, a month, a little bit longer than that in some cases, but a lot of the times you like meet, talk a little bit, decide that you would be a good match, and then you get married.
Yeah.
And so you have no idea what that person's really like because they've always been on their best behavior with you.
Exactly.
And now you're going to live with them forever, I guess.
Yeah. You couldn't live with them before, like kissing probably didn't happen before.
Yeah. I think Mr. and Mrs. Bennet might be a really good example of it.
Yes.
You just don't know what you're going to get, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They would probably be horrified at like how long our engagements are. They'd be like, what? I was engaged to my husband for 8 months and that's like not that long, but like they probably would have been like 8 months.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how long people date before they get engaged or anything? Because like me and my boyfriend have been together almost 5 years, and like it just is what it is.
Yeah, Skylar and I were together 5 years. 5 years, and we lived together for about 4.5.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
So I just think that's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would they think?
Scandalous.
Right. Yes.
Oh man, would have been the talk of the town.
Yep. Me without a bonnet on.
So Amanda, sorry. Say your question one more time.
That Charlotte declares early in the book that happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance.
Okay. Yeah, definitely back then. I think that would have been the norm. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Like Charlotte, her story and her presence in the book. I think it's interesting because she I don't feel like. Sorry, I'm gonna put my dog down. He's in my lap. I don't feel like Austen was criticizing Charlotte and her way of thinking. Just she was presenting Charlotte more to the reader as like a contrast. As like this is one idea of marriage. And for Charlotte, she's like, don't criticize me. This is what's going to work for me.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like Austen is maybe even trying to criticize that, but more just like presenting it to the reader and going like, what do you like? Which is the better choice?
Right.
and like how do we go forward in society?
Yeah. And I always feel like Charlotte allows us to see a flaw in Elizabeth, which is that she thinks that her way is the only way. And like, I don't know, I mean, Charlotte's older than her, but I don't know how different their financial situations were. I can't really remember, but like Charlotte seemed like she needed to get married. And so like the sooner the better. And if she could marry someone who had some money, like that was going to be the best option for her. And I feel like Elizabeth's quick judgment of that sort of allowed the reader the first glimpse that like, oh, Pride and Prejudice, I see.
Elizabeth was very quick to judge her for that too. Yeah. It's like Charlotte found a man that she could tolerate, you know, in a place that she could tolerate. She could have a house of her own, which is what she ultimately really wanted, was to be able to have that space and have a house to take care of and, you know, have kids and move on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of your points too, Victoria, was do you think Austen would criticize Charlotte for marrying Mr. Collins, or is her mentality presented as just another way of looking at marriage? And I do think it is, like, especially in this case.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is our protagonist though, so it's kind of like we're supposed to root for Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But also I don't feel like we're supposed to like root against Charlotte necessarily. I agree. It's just like, here's one picture and here's another picture. Of course, Elizabeth makes a more interesting story because of the romance element, right? There's no romance element with Charlotte. So,
well, and then Mrs. Bennet is kind of mean about it too, because she's like, oh, our house is going to the Lucases. It's like, well,
she very much looks down on that.
Like we always have to one up the Lucases. And do you know?
Mrs. Bennet, I feel like, is a character that's an example of someone who's just always looking outward and looking at like, what can society do for me? And I think she's just a character that doesn't reflect. At least that's what I get from Mrs. Bennet. She's a character that doesn't look inward, doesn't really analyze her own thoughts and behaviors. She just kind of looks outward. What can society do for my family?
Yeah, totally.
Whereas, you know, it should be like, oh, I'm really happy for my friend and her daughter. And, you know, if anyone's going to have this house next, I would really like for it to be someone who knows the house, who grew up in the house, who will take care of the house. So,
I did think it was interesting, though, because they clearly wanted the house to stay with one of the Bennet sisters. I thought it was interesting that Collins only proposed to Elizabeth. And then, I mean, I guess it would have been weird if he'd proposed to her and then been like, all right, Mary, what about you? But that's kind of what I would like expect just from like, I don't know.
Right. Just go down the line. You've got 5 of them.
Well, I mean, doesn't he is interested in Jane first.
Yeah, because she's pretty.
Elizabeth was second. So
I don't know.
I don't know why he doesn't just go down the line.
We just don't have anything going for him, apparently.
I want to know how like him and Charlotte got to know each other, even, because it kind of seems like he proposed to Elizabeth one day and then like the next day he was engaged to Charlotte.
I think Elizabeth kind of thrust them together.
Did she?
As a barrier between herself and Mr. Collins.
And why was she so judgmental that Charlotte married him? You did this. It's like setting people up on a blind date and then be like, dang it, you're dating now. I don't get
it. Man, I didn't want to have to talk to him, so I made you talk to him. And then he was like, you know what, I kind of like this girl.
And now I have to talk to him because you're talking to him.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting.
Do we want another question?
Yes.
We kind of went over. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, do I want to keep talking about marriage?
We kind of went over some of mine indirectly. But I think the only other one that I had was thought about was just favorite passages or favorite dialogue, because in reading the book physically, the first time I actually listened to it, and so I was like semi distracted, driving around and listening to it. I read it a little bit more physically. I still kind of did both, but reading it physically, I was just struck by how amazing the dialogue is. And I was just wondering if anybody had any favorite passages, favorite speeches, favorite dialogue.
Yes.
Amanda, do you want to go first?
I mean, I love Mr. Collins's proposal. I love Darcy's proposal.
Oh.
I love their chat in the hotel, restaurant, tavern thing when he's going to like get Lydia secretly. Yeah. And obviously I love the ending part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how awkward Collins's proposal is. It is put in that situation, and how many times does she try to cut him off and be like, no, and then he's constantly like, you just need time to think. You need time to think. You're just being a girl, you're having a flair for the dramatics, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna marry you.
And doesn't he like threaten to ask again? Isn't he like, oh, okay, well, I'll just ask you again later?
Yeah.
She's like, no, I don't want to do it.
He insults her like, oh, I know ladies sometimes play hard to get. So playing hard to get.
What a guy.
Yeah, and then her mom, I'll never talk to you again if you don't say yes. And her dad, well, you're in a predicament. Either your mom's not going to talk to you if you say yes, or I won't if you do.
Yeah, that's a great moment too. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think pretty much anything like that Mr. Bennett says is my favorite because he's got such sarcastic comebacks to everything.
Yeah,
I just love it.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love how her characters are so distinct in the way they talk. I think that's really impressive as a writer. That's really hard to do sometimes, to give them each a very specific voice. And I think Austen's just so like, that's her gift. I think that is her gift as a writer.
Yeah.
I also, one of my favorites is Lady Catherine and Elizabeth's showdown. That's one of my favorite dialogue.
Yeah.
So wild.
Well, yeah, because at that point, Elizabeth's mind is still made up against Darcy, isn't it? Or is she?
I think she might be starting to change her mind. I don't really remember. And I'm now that I've watched the movie, I'm just getting the movie scene in my head. But I'm pretty sure she like was sort of coming around to the idea, and then but she wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And then Lady Catherine came to her and she was like, okay, well now we're gonna have this conversation, I guess.
Because she didn't know at that point that Darcy was helping Wickham, right? It wasn't until after they got back.
I don't remember.
No, I thought Lady Catherine. Oh, now I can't remember. For some reason I thought she went to the Bennett's house after they were back and picked up Elizabeth and made her ride around in her coach.
They were walking around the garden.
Oh shoot, I don't remember then.
Because Catherine goes to Longbourn, goes to her place. I think at this point she had read, like Darcy had sent her the letter that was explaining why he did the things he did. So I think her at this part, like her heart was softened a bit towards him. I think.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, she's like, I'm not going to say it. And I think she, like, whether she had softened towards Darcy or not, I think just the fact that someone else was like, you are not going to do this. She's like, well, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not giving you that satisfaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like that moment in the book because you can see how, like, Lady Catherine she has intimidation tactics that like she probably used before with her privilege, and you can see that she's used to telling people what to do and having them listen to her. And the fact that Elizabeth is like, I'm not going to take your status as like what's going to dictate my life is very it's something like Lady Catherine hadn't, I don't think she's seen before. Like, I think it's the first time she's probably had that happen to her.
She's used to having the strongest will in the room, and now when she's standing next to Elizabeth, it's like the two, like, I don't know, most stubborn female characters, I guess, in the book, going head to head.
Yeah, even Darcy, who is very like opinionated outwardly with the Bingley group, even when he would be in the room with Lady Catherine, he didn't speak up either against her. Yeah, so yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, because I'm part of that might have been that, like, he's, again, going back to like the class thing, Darcy was like very well aware that she was like, I don't know if she's even higher class than him, but like just she's older, and so he like defers to her judgment, whereas Elizabeth is like, listen, you've met my mom and my sisters. I am not high class. I will not be spoken to like this. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, so much fun. Yeah.
Mary,
do we want to talk? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, Mary, if you had any favorite passages or favorite speeches.
I wish I still had my book with me, but I got it from the library, so I already returned it. But I really enjoy anything that like Mr. Bennet says. He's like, I don't know. I like the stuff that he says. And I also like when Elizabeth is talking to like Bingley, I think she's talking to Bingley's sister, and she's making like snarky or sarcastic comments to her, but they're very like borderline. Like, she could be really saying that, but you just know that she's not, because you can like read the context. But I really enjoy that as well. I just like the snark. I think it's interesting that like people have been using sarcasm to like combat rude people forever.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah. What I was going to say, one of my questions I had that linked back to a favorite passage was when Darcy first proposes, he insults Elizabeth's family. And did you think his judgments were fair?
I mean, I don't think they were not fair, but I also don't think he should have said them. They were definitely the type of thing that he should have just kept right in here.
Yeah. Or, not your proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not very tactful in, like, even if he's right, like I don't think he's like socially aware enough to like know how to like sugarcoat it, even as I think you might do in that situation. But I think he just makes observations and doesn't think about how they sound coming back to him.
And like, I feel like the kinds of things that he said are the kinds of things that like you're only maybe allowed to agree with if someone else says it about their own family. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what the judgments were, but I don't think he said anything that was like wrong.
No.
The only time he was really wrong is when he told Bingley that Jane wasn't interested in him.
Yeah.
Or like implied that she didn't seem interested. But even then, like, I don't know.
He makes a lot of assumptions. And,
and
basically you see his assumptions coming out in that proposal. All the ways that he's perceived things, and he's perceived Jane and Bingley. And he just assumes he's right, which I think is part of the pride, right? So he just assumes that his assumptions are correct, and he just does not expect to be wrong.
Or he definitely doesn't expect to be told that he's wrong. I think that's the other big thing, is he's like, I don't know. So I guess kind of like Lady Catherine, so used to just having people like defer to his judgment, that as soon as someone's like, actually no, he's like, oh, I don't know what to do now. But yeah. Do you guys want to talk about Wickham and Lydia?
Oh, yeah. That's
Wickham,
kind of an important plot point.
Generally.
I forgot, like, because I'm so used to the movie version of him that he bounces around so much in the book.
Yeah.
And it's pretty early on too that Elizabeth, like, you think she's super infatuated with him, but she's really not. And it's super early on that you find out that like what happened between Wickham and the Darcys and stuff.
Yeah. Georgiana.
Yeah. Georgiana?
Yes. Something like that. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That was surprising. And it's, yeah, I don't know. Also, because Wickham, he's like interested in Elizabeth, but he's also talking to someone else. And I don't remember who not a Bennett sister, somebody.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it is.
Talking to Elizabeth for another girl didn't like her father recently pass away or something. So she's got a pretty big inheritance coming. And so he starts talking to her because that's how he can get money.
Yeah. The scoundrel.
Yeah.
I also thought it was, so I know, Amanda, you and I talked about when we were doing our buddy read of this, like why Wickham even went with Lydia at all if he knew that he was going to have to marry for money. So I watched like a 45-minute YouTube video on it. And the lady said that, well, she talked about a lot of stuff, but one of the big things that she said was like, he had gambling debts, so he was going to leave anyway. And Lydia was just flirting with him. So he was like, may as well.
Yeah, because he wanted to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't think he was going to have to actually marry her.
Nope.
So,
yeah, just tarnish her reputation, whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was just convenient, and Lydia just oblivious and would not have realized what she was doing.
Yeah.
And even at the end, she does not, I don't think she really learns what she did.
No, I think she thinks, she was like, I win. I got a husband. Go me. Like,
yeah, well, at the end too, she's like, oh, going to whatever the town was is you all need to go. You all need to go because that's where you find husbands.
Bristol. Yeah. Or Brighton.
Brighton. Yep. Brighton.
Yes. One of those.
Yeah.
I think Lydia is a picture of like what Mrs. Bennet's mentality, like the damage that it can do. I think that's the purpose of Lydia's character, showing how bad it can get if you like just follow that mentality of marriage or bust.
And like for a little bit, it seems like Mrs. Bennet is learning to not be like that anymore. But then as soon as Lydia and Wickham get married, she's like, nope, I was right.
I've got it already. Let's marry it off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Lydia and Kitty both, just obviously not to the extremes with Kitty.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because she's the younger or the older.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so weird that Lydia is the youngest and yet she's got so much influence over her other sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't fully understand the Wickham plot, like why it would have been a big deal until, again, like on a reread and like looking into it, because there are things that we don't know anymore of like why would that destroy a family, you know? And it's just reputation of a family held such weight, and it's just not something that I think we can even understand in our modern sensibilities, like what that really would have meant for them and like for their line and like the long-term implications. So that was definitely a plot that I honestly didn't fully understand until having to like do internet sleuthing.
Because I mean, I know there's like the saying, like you don't just marry a person, you marry their family. But like, I don't think that's more for like annoying mother-in-laws now. Whereas at the time it was like, you take on this whole reputation. That's the word. Yes.
And it would have financial consequences for your reputation. So that's something I think we don't deal with anymore. Like if you marry a dud, then like, I don't know, your family usually just accepts it and they're like, well, he's in the family now. It's not life-changing.
It's not the same type of like life-altering sort of thing. And then that kind of goes into, I don't remember which one of you sent the question, but about like Darcy's motivations for helping Lydia. And so it's like, yes, he loved Elizabeth, but I also think it was so that he would be able to marry her. Because if her family's reputation was ruined like that, he would have had even a harder time already going against what his family wants.
Yeah, I could see that. I think a lot of it too is I do feel like he feels responsible for Wickham too.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, because he didn't give Wickham the money that Wickham begged for, it made him go to this next extreme. And I think he feels responsible that, you know, if he had just given him the money, like like was in the will or whatever, then Lydia wouldn't have potentially come to ruin. So I think he feels like he has to clean up the mess a bit.
Yeah. And I think he also feels a little responsible because he told Elizabeth, but not everyone else knows that Wickham's done stuff like this before. And so he probably feels as if he like failed the Bennet family by not, because that's what Elizabeth says. She says she wishes she told her family.
Yeah. I mean, he probably should have gone to her. I don't know. Who else would he have gone to with that?
Dad? I don't know.
Because it's not like anyone had an actual relationship with Wickham.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but maybe just letting the whole family know, like, hey, she's going to be in this town where Wickham is, and he's a dirtbag. Just FYI.
I can't imagine how, like, upset you, because Lydia was she stayed with, like, a relative, right?
Yeah.
How mad they must be at that relative for letting her run away with some guy.
Yeah. Like, man, if anyone's going to pay these debts, it's going to be that relative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting, Mary and Amanda. I had not really thought of Darcy as having other intentions of like, I have to save the family if I want to like marry into the family. I honestly never seen that before, but I guess that could be an element. Like, I don't want to think that, because I think I, as a reader, I want to think that Darcy just like cares about Elizabeth, and that's like how they play it in the movies and stuff. But like,
I definitely think that's a big part of it.
But it would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that like majority is I love Elizabeth, and therefore she loves her family, so I should help her family. I think that's like a big part of it, but I also think, I mean, I feel like Darcy's a pretty practical guy.
It would affect him
probably
too,
thinking about the practicalities.
Yeah,
you're right. It would affect him. So it's just not something I'd really caught before. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I love this book.
I know.
I like it too. I don't remember liking it as much when I read it the first time, but it was like 10 years ago for school. So
yeah,
I loved it so much more the second time. And I think for me, I think I've just learned like I can't do books like this on audio because I will miss way too much.
Yeah.
So I think I just always have to read it physically.
Yeah,
that definitely helps me. But yeah, I don't know how other Jane Austen books are gonna hold up, but like I'm like Pride and Prejudice, it's just like 5 stars for me, and it's just like a favorite classic. So we'll see how the other Jane Austen books hold up. But they have a lot to live up to, because I just love Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah. I was telling Mary last time that Pride and Prejudice is my favorite, but also I really enjoy Persuasion. So, but that's
another big one that I always hear people say they love.
Yeah, I've heard other people too say that's a favorite.
Yeah.
That, and then I feel like there's that obscure bunch who just really love Emma and are diehard Emma fans. I think
I'm not.
Either love or hate Emma, I think.
It's hard for me because Emma as a character is not a fun person. She's not likable at all, and I have to like a character to like a book.
I don't relate to Emma. I don't find as much to relate to, and I like there's not as much that I also aspire to be. Like I don't really aspire to be like Emma. Emma is more of a flawed character, I think. And she's on purpose a flawed character.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see her growth as much when I read Emma. But I know people that love Emma say that's what they love, is they love how she grows as a character. So maybe I didn't read it properly. But
I read it on audiobook, so maybe I didn't either.
I don't know. Because isn't the premise of Emma that she's like already rich, and so she doesn't need to find a husband, so she just tries to find everybody else a husband?
Yeah, she tries to play matchmaker.
Wow. So it's Jane Austen's dream life.
Yeah.
I think Jane Austen even maybe said that Emma was one of her favorite protagonists that she wrote.
I think I've heard that as well, but I don't know who interviewed her and asked her that question in 1814, but
right.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I find a lot more to like in Elizabeth.
I do too. And I think that's probably why Pride and Prejudice is such a popular book, is that Elizabeth is such a good heroine.
Yeah.
She's like flawed, but she's still like headstrong and independent. So I feel like that's probably why modern readers like her too. Because she's got a lot of like, I don't know, more modern ideals than like.
Yeah, she does.
She's very fleshed out too. She's just not a 2D character at all.
Yeah.
She has a lot of really good character growth too.
For sure.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of just like the not 2D characters. That's one of the things I really liked about Pride and Prejudice when compared to Sense and Sensibility. Because I feel like Sense and Sensibility, a lot of the characters are like over dramatic and like caricatures of themselves rather than feeling like real people. And even Lydia, who's like in Mrs. Bennet, like the most out there characters in Pride and Prejudice, I still feel like we're very realistic to like real people. I don't know.
Yeah. Versus what Eleanor and Marianne, they were like polar opposites, and Eleanor had a little bit more personality than Marianne did, but Marianne was very like a very extreme personality type.
Yeah,
that's all you ever saw of her.
Yeah, and like even there was like a neighbor who was just like the epitome of like the nosy neighbor character, and like
Jennings,
I think.
Jennings.
I don't remember. But I just felt like every character in that book was so like out there that they kind of seemed flat.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It'll be interesting when you get to that one in Jane Austen July, Victoria, to see what you think.
Yeah.
I recently watched the movie, so I kind of remember like who people are. And like I know Marianne is very dramatic in the movie and stuff.
Yeah.
And I love Eleanor. I love Eleanor as a character for sure. I think between the two of them, Eleanor has my heart more than Marianne does.
Yeah, I think that's what we agreed on. Yeah.
But it'll be cool to see how it plays off in the book too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched the movie for the first time. I think they got it pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know I'd seen the movie until I read the book, and then I was like, yes, I've seen this film.
Yep.
But yeah, because it's the 1996 one, right?
With Alan Rickman and
Emma
Thompson and
Winslet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
It's got really beautiful scenery.
That's the thing that I like. I guess like another reason that I always like the movies and like Jane Austen's books so far is I feel like she does a really good job of like, I don't know, maybe it's just that's what settings were like back then, but I always feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
I feel like she does a really good job of like bringing you into the story. I don't know.
You're taking the stroll around the room with Elizabeth and whatever Miss Bingley's name is, and you're on the Pemberley estate.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's a good scene. Taking a turn about the room.
Yeah.
For some exercise.
Our figures are at their most advantageous.
Yeah.
Would you like to join us, Darcy? You only have 2 motives for taking a turn about the room.
Gosh.
Good scene.
Yeah, that is a good scene. Well, is there anything else we wanted to talk about while we're here?
I think we covered mine.
I think we either directly or indirectly got to all of the questions. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. This was fun.
Yes. I'm so glad you joined us, Victoria.
Oh yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to read more Jane Austen books, and then hopefully be a Jane Austen expert. At the end of the
Yeah.
year.
Mail, maybe.
Oh man.
It'll be really fun though when we get to Mansfield Park, because that's the one I haven't read. So it'll be a fresh book for all three of us at the same time.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So join us in June if you would like to read Mansfield Park.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
The next live show, are you planning on the end of June?
Probably. That works. Give people the most time. Prior to this month, it's just been me and Amanda buddy reading it and then just doing a live show.
Yep.
But now that, let's, I guess, aim for the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that works for me.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. I can't wait.
Yeah.
New Jane Austen story that I don't know at all.
Yeah. I have no clue what this one's about.
That's the hard thing with Pride and Prejudice is like I've seen so many adaptations, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what is an adaptation I've seen and what is in the book? Like they come together. So so it'll be cool to go at one just fresh.
Yeah,
for sure. Is there even a Mansfield Park movie adaptation at all?
I think there is.
Yeah.
It might be like BBC or something.
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense.
Series.
Yeah. Like a 4-episode.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I've seen, like in my mind I can picture an actress.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess thank you guys so much for watching. And if you're watching this on replay, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to leave in the comments down below any comments or whatever that you have. And we will see you in June. Bye.
Bye.